just say before the introduction that the kids at Africa West were just grooving in that intro? So way to go. I love that enthusiasm, guys. My name is Jesse, and I am with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. If you're joining us for the first time today, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. And I just want to say a huge thank you to all our teachers. We have done over 400 programs this year, and it's been so exciting having you in for such amazing broadcasts featuring the coolest scientists, explorers, facilities, and places around this planet. Now, May, as you may well know, is our month dedicated to biodiversity. We are diving in with octopus, with raptors, with sharks and turtles, and so many more amazing creatures. It is also our Backyard Bio Global Nature campaigns. If you haven't checked out backyardbio.net yet, we will talk about that a little bit later in today's presentation, and I'm so excited to have so many amazing teachers taking part. Now, there's no better guide to biodiversity and nature in your neighborhood than the Nature Conservancy. They are one of the leading conservation and education organizations in the world. And so today we are privileged to be joined by Matt and Forrest there, who are going to take us on a little journey of all the amazing things that you can find close to home, sort of the essence of Backyard Bio, the essence of what we're trying to sort of foster in you guys throughout the month of May and beyond. And so you don't need to go to the Great Barrier Reef or East Africa or the Amazon to go explore wildlife. You can find it close to home, whether it's small things like insects, coyotes, birds, all the amazing wildlife that lives close to you. And so we're going to learn from the amazing Nature Conservancy team about how to do that, how to use an incredible tool called iNaturalist, and so much more. Before I turn it over to them, one last housekeeping note. We are going to have a Kahoot quiz today. So if you're joining us on YouTube today from one of our many classes registered, check out that game pin. I will put that up again before we go live with that. But if you want to play along before Q&A, that is your one-stop shop. Without further ado, thank you so much for joining us today, Matt and Forrest, and take us away, guys. I'm so excited to learn about nature in my neighborhood. It's great.
Yeah, thank you, Jesse. It's great to be here. Forrest and I just wanted to quickly introduce ourselves. My name is Matt Mulligan. I go by he, him. My title is Urban Biodiversity Program Manager with the Nature Conservancy, and I live on the west suburbs of Chicago, so right by the big city.
Hi, everyone. My name is Forrest Cortes, and I am also with the Nature Conservancy. I lead our community engagement efforts in Chicago, and I live right here in Chicago in the city. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm really excited to be here with all of you today. All right, so we wanted to start by maybe explaining a little bit about what we do. We've got some fun jobs. At least I think our jobs are really fun. I'll kick us off and tell you a little bit about my work, and then I'll pass it over to Matt to tell you all a little bit about his work. So I grew up in Chicago in the city, and I grew up going to the parks, playing outside, playing in the garden, and then really got interested in nature and really got interested in animals and plants and hanging out with people outside. And so my job is all about connecting people like all of you, families, kids, adults, to the outdoors. So going outside and learning about nature in our communities, understanding how we're a part of nature, how our cities can be a home to nature, and just getting outdoors all the time. So I really love my job. And my degree, I went to college for wildlife ecology and management, which means that I learned how to tell different birds apart, how to look at plants and identify the different types of plants that live outside. And I come back to Chicago and I bring that learning to our communities. And I work with people who live in the city to help connect them to these different things that grow and live in our neighborhoods. So Matt, tell us a little bit about your job.
Yeah, thanks, Forrest. I had a little bit different background from Forrest. I actually grew up in a smaller town south of the city of Chicago. I grew up with like a cornfield behind me and in front of me. So I spent a lot of time with my siblings and with my friends, like going outdoors and just exploring nature very informally. I always had an interest in plants and animals, which really aligns closely with like what I do now. So right now, I really just study and maintain and try to figure out how plants and animals can really live and thrive within cities. So what can we do in order to better understand where they are in the cities, and how do we make a better home for all those different species? And we do that through restoration, which is kind of a fancy way of saying we're gardening on a large scale to try to have as many different local plant species as possible in these different places so that they could be better homes and food for wildlife or wild animals. So my career has been really a bit of a winding path. My central theme has just always been loving nature and animals. Like every kid, I think, that loved animals, I started off wanting to be a veterinarian, but then dabbled in zookeeping, and I did that for 6 weeks in an internship, which was really fun. But then eventually I, ended in a career that is a combination of environmental education and science, which is really perfect for me. I went to school studying like wildlife and plant life, which was really fun. But I always just want to stress that we don't always know when we're younger what we want to do, and that's okay. It's really just important to try a lot of different things to figure out what you like and what you don't like, which sounds really simple until you kind of put it into practice in the real world. So while I never became a veterinarian like I originally planned, I actually ended up marrying one. So I kind of got into that field a little bit informally. So really excited to meet you all and to talk a little bit about this program.
Thanks, Matt. Your work is really exciting. And I like your advice about trying out different things to figure out what you want to do for your job when you grow up. I used to go to the park with my family. We used to volunteer at the forest preserves, and that helped me figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up. And here I am today. So when we think of cities, we usually think about buildings and roads and concrete and maybe a lot of traffic and noise. But there's nature right here in Chicago and in other cities around the country and around the world. So what are some places in the city where people can find plants and animals, Matt?
Yeah, it's a good point for us. And you can find nature practically anywhere in the city. It doesn't have to be in just like natural areas that people typically think animals and plants are, like forest preserves, but you can find them in parks and cemeteries and golf courses. Even vacant lots can be a really good home for different plant and animal species. The challenge is to really try to find these species in unexpected places. So to look for these plants and animals in alleys, maybe in backyards, along the sidewalk as you're giving like maybe your dog a walk around the block. So others can learn more about the different species that are in your neighborhood. That's what I would really recommend.
Yeah, this is a really good time of year to get outside, right? There's birds flying through, coming from all over the world to fly north for the summer, which is what we call migration. So there's a lot of birds passing through. The plants are starting to green up by us in Chicago and maybe where all of you live. And things are really starting to get warmer and greener. So I'm excited to get out some more. But why are these places that you talk about so important to people? Like why is it good to have nature in our cities, Matt?
That's a really good question, Forrest. Having green spaces in the city, whether it's just a park or a natural area, it provides all kinds of different benefits that keep us happy and healthy. Trees and other plants, they help keep the air clean. They can lower the number of really hot days in the summer, so we're all much more comfortable. And they can prevent our streets and our homes from flooding as often. So they have a lot of really positive benefits. And not only do they kind of help us in those ways, but they're also really great open areas for us to go out and exercise, to connect with family and friends, and even just to relax if we're having a really stressful day. A nice quiet green space to just kind of really chill. And the more plants and animals that we have in these green spaces, the more roles that they can fill. So a really good example of that are mosquitoes. I don't think a lot of people really like mosquitoes. They can bite us, they can make us sick. But there are animals like dragonflies and bats that fly around and eat thousands and thousands of mosquitoes each and every night that can have all kinds of really positive benefits. It keeps those numbers down so that we don't get sick from those species. So, really having a lot of these different plants and animals in the city allows for them to provide more helpful roles that make our lives better. And, it really just kind of shows all the different ways that nature interacts with each other to really create balance.
Yeah, it sounds like nature is all about balance, especially in the city. I love going on picnics and playing with the frisbee or going to the beach, but I will say the mosquitoes are not my favorite, and the flies can be pretty annoying too. But they serve a purpose, right? The birds eat them. Reptiles and amphibians can eat them, like frogs or lizards. So I think that there's a purpose for everything in nature, right? And it's nice to have all those things close to home so we can explore them while we're outside. All right, so I've got another question for you. So getting outside is a great way to connect with friends and neighbors like we talked about, and to get to know our plant and animal neighbors, right? Because we may live on a street with lots of people and houses, but there's usually trees and there might be some grass and there might be some bugs and some butterflies that live there too. So what are some of your favorite plants and animals that you can find here in Chicago, Matt?
Forrest, I have more plants and animals that are favorites that I don't think we have time for, but I'll touch on just a couple. One would be coyote, and that's pictured in the top left if you haven't seen one before. Coyotes are just incredibly smart and adaptable. In the city of Chicago, there's more than 3,000 coyotes in the area, and most people don't even know that they're there. And it's just amazing to kind of see how they move from kind of like natural kind of forest areas to the city, and they learn different skills. One really cool example is that a lot of coyotes in the city, they look both ways before crossing the street. So it's really just a neat adaptation that they have. Another group of animals, Forrest talked about migratory birds, which are birds that fly thousands of miles each and every year to go from a warmer area up to our section of the country in Chicago, as well as other areas in the United States, and then fly back down south when it starts getting colder. But one species that does this is called the black-crowned night heron, and that's the picture in the middle center that Forrest is circling right there. And these are really interesting birds because they're endangered in the state of Illinois. And what they do is they fly from down south up to the city of Chicago at Lincoln Park Zoo, and we have the largest nesting colony of these birds in the entire state, right in the middle of Chicago. So they'll fly up to Chicago, they'll make nests, they'll have babies, and then when the weather gets cold, they'll fly back down south. So it's just really neat to see that out of the entire state of Illinois, they choose the biggest city to make their home. And then finally, there's the monarch butterfly, which is the top center picture. It is a small insect that is orange and black. And these are just so fascinating animals because they fly all the way from Mexico, all the way up to the northern part of the United States, like Illinois, each and every year. And one thing that's really unique about this monarch butterfly is that they rely on a plant called milkweed. And it's a really beautiful plant that has pink flowers, white flowers, orange flowers, depending on the species. But they eat it, and it actually makes them poisonous to other animals. So it's nothing that we have to be afraid of. But if an animal were to eat the butterfly, it would make them sick. So it keeps them safe. It's one way that they protect themselves. But one way that we can help these monarch butterflies as they're making that long journey is that we can plant milkweed plants in our own gardens, or even put them in planter pots on a balcony. So that's one way to kind of help them recuperate as they're making this really long journey up to the United States each and every year. So that's just a couple really interesting kind of animals and one plant in the milkweed. But Forrest, I don't know if there was a couple other plants that you'd like to share in the city that you really enjoy.
Yeah, I love the picture on the right here. So if you look on the right of the screen, there's a plant called wild bergamot. And so this is a cousin to the mint that we have in our gum, in our tea. It's a plant that has a really nice smell in the leaves. And I think the flowers look like fireworks. I think they're really pretty. And butterflies and bees depend on this plant for food and to be able to survive. So I like the point that you made, Matt, about the butterfly and the milkweed. Like all of these things fit together. The plants help the animals help the plants. And then and I think it's really cool that we've got so much here in the city. People don't realize we have all these animals here in the city. Coyotes that cross the street, birds that fly all the way from South America or Southern United States just to be here in the city with us and to come to the habitat that we create here. I think that's really cool. But yeah, those are some of my favorites too, Matt. And I bet a lot of people on this call have seen different animals or plants in their neighborhood that they've gotten to know and maybe think of like their neighbors. So a lot of us like exploring outdoors, but we don't always know what we're looking at. So how do you know what you're looking at when you're outside? You obviously got a lot of training in school and you've read a lot and you've learned a lot from other people, but what are some tools that people can use to help to explore nature close to them at home?
That's a great question, Forrest. And it's really great. We're living in a fantastic time where technology has really made it to where we don't have to go to school for many years in order to be able to name and find different plants and animal species. There's different tools that are created that are free and open to all of us that we can use. And one of them is iNaturalist. And this is essentially an app that you can download on your phone. And it's a great way to learn about all living things around you. If it's alive, it has an inventory for it. So you don't have to be a nature expert. All you have to do is go outdoors and use like a smartphone or some kind of computer, and you take an image of what you're seeing, and then you work through and try to figure out what it is. So Forrest, if you could click next slide. So I just took a couple screenshots here from my phone of an identification that I did using iNaturalist over the winter. I was out walking my dog and we saw a tiny little small mammal. And I took a photo with my phone. And this is just kind of walking through the process of identifying that animal. So it's a small little rodent you can see in the top left corner photo. That's Forrest is circling. And when you take that photo, the app will actually try to figure out what it is, just based on the image. So what you can see is there's a lot of different suggestions there. A lot of them are hedgehogs. And if those of you who have been in kind of the northern part of the United States, you're not going to find any hedgehogs unless someone lost one as a pet. So it's really nice. You can almost eliminate them based on where you are. So we can get rid of all the different hedgehogs. We didn't have any hedgehogs running around in my neighborhood. And then there's also a muskrat that was suggested, but they're very big animals. So you can kind of narrow things down based on the size. And one of the suggestions, it's the second one down, was the meadow vole, and that's actually what that animal was. But let's say you didn't study small mammals and know all the different rodents in your area, which is very understandable. You could even just say, I don't know. You don't even have to identify what it is. So then you move to the next step, which is the middle picture here, and you write down in the little note section everything that you noticed about that animal. So I wrote that it had a gray belly, it had a really short tail. So just anything that you notice based on its behavior or what it looks like. And then you give a location of where that animal was. And then you upload that observation, which is what you're seeing on the right. And it'll give it a classification. So at that point, it needs an ID. And what they do is that really the whole online community is able to see your upload, and they can go through and they can offer suggestions for you. So if you didn't know what it was, they can, work through with you or other people who are using iNaturalist to try to figure out what it is. And once 3 or more people have identified what that picture is, then it reaches a level called research grade. And that means that scientists can use it in larger projects, which is really exciting. But that's what's just so great about this. You don't need to know what it is in order to use it. Or you don't need to know what those species are in order to go through and use the app. You can go through and just learn as you go. And then as people are helping you out, you start to learn what those different species are. And then you can start to become the expert, and you can help other people to identify what those species are.
So this is really cool, Matt. This is like, it's almost like a video game, right? Like you can take this, I love my phone and I love being outside. I can like take my family and my friends and go outside and then use this iNaturalist app to take pictures, right? And then basically make a really good guess about what the animal might be, write down some notes about the color, the size, where I saw it, how big it is, if it made any noises. And then someone will go in and look at my observation and tell me if I got it right, or maybe help me to figure out what it might be. So basically, it's pretty cool.
It is. It's basically like you have like a little field guide that you're building yourself, but you have all of these people there to help support you along the way, which is really great. So I will note that iNaturalist is for people who are 13 years or older, but there's a really good introductory app. Forrest, if you could go back one. So it's called Seek. So this is like kind of a cool way of introducing it. So if you're, 12 years or younger, this is the app that you would use. It doesn't have like the location built in. So when you're finding an animal and taking a picture, it doesn't say where you are necessarily, and it doesn't have that online community. So there's not people helping you to identify things. But one really cool thing about this app is that as you're taking the picture, it's telling you what animal it's seeing. So in the picture with the monarchs on the bottom left, you can see that it's taking a picture of a monarch butterfly, and it's telling you as your camera's open that that is exactly what it is, which is kind of neat. It's giving you that instant gratification as you go through. So it's really a way of kind of training and learning about those different species so that when you get a little bit older, you're able to use iNaturalist and kind of graduate onto that program. And one really fun thing with the Seek app that I love is that they have a badge system. So you get to identify different plants and animals, and based on like kind of lifetime achievements or seasonal kind of events, if you will, you can earn different badges as you go, which is really kind of a fun incentive, and it sets you apart from other people using the app, which is really fun. So I like to think of that as training, and then you graduate onto iNaturalist and you can start to contribute to some of these bigger projects.
That's awesome, Matt. It sounds like something that'd be really fun to do with my family or as a team, as a classroom. So what can we learn from something like this, right? We're collecting all this information. It's going online. What do people learn from this?
Right. So you can learn quite a bit from this information. So really, we think about like, each and every one of you can teach us about your neighborhood. You're experts in your own neighborhood, and you know more about like the plants and animals in that area. And we can learn from each and every neighborhood to then have a better understanding of entire cities. So once we know where each of these plants and animals are located in these cities, then we can start to make sure that they have everything that they need so that we're being better neighbors towards these plant and animal species as well, because we have that responsibility too.
That's awesome. I bet there's some really cool stuff that people find in their backyards, at their parks, on their street. So what are some of the things that people find most in Chicago? Like what are the most common animals that people see when they're using this in Chicago?
Right. Yeah. Some of the most common species that we see in Chicago are kind of across like all the different areas within the United States. So it's a lot of the things that we see all across the country. So some common species that we see include gray squirrels, mallard ducks, American robin, bright red cardinals, Canada geese that used to migrate across the country, but some of them stay year-round now. And then also monarch butterflies actually seen the most. And they're obviously very bright, very charismatic, and that's usually why people really like them, is because they have a deep connection with those different species. But you can run into some rare species at certain times of the year, which is really fun. But the real surprising thing with using this tool is trying to find plants and animals in unexpected places. So areas that people aren't normally looking for them. So it just goes to show you that really any place can be a good home for wildlife. It's just really the thrill of trying to find some of those areas that people don't normally look.
Yeah, it's like hide and go seek with your animal and plant neighbors. Like I'm looking at this picture right here, and if you walked right by, you wouldn't notice there was a caterpillar under the leaf, and that's a little baby monarch butterfly waiting to grow up into a butterfly. So that's kind of cool. And then some of those rare animals, like you talked about, like a fox or maybe a woodpecker, would be really cool to see in my neighborhood. And there's different times of year where I might be able to spot them. So it's like hide and go seek, but you never know what you're going to find. So how are scientists, Matt, using photos and locations in iNaturalist?
Yeah, so scientists are relying on iNaturalist all the time. And that's because people all over the world are watching for different plants and animals, and you can cover way more ground than a researcher ever could. So, it's really just kind of broadening the effort of trying to find all these different species. And by doing that, it allows scientists to know more about large cities like Chicago, or compare plants and animals found here with other cities. So they can do these like larger research projects that have broader impacts, which is really exciting. These animals are also always on the move. So community scientists using iNaturalist can help us identify if animals are expanding their range. And that's basically the area that they live in. So each animal typically lives in a specific area, but sometimes they go beyond that. So having a lot of people looking out for these different plants and animals can help us to learn how these different animals are changing over time. And for our project in Chicago, we're wanting to better understand what sections of the city have a lot of different plants and animals and what makes those places better homes for them. So we, are just trying to find out where these animals are. And we're seeing that they're not just in the forest preserves, but they're all over, even just in residential areas and communities with lots of homes. So even areas that don't have a lot of green space can be a really great home for wildlife. And that's what we want to know, is the relationship between the city and nature and how we can be better, neighbors within that relationship.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've seen, animals at the playground, on empty lots, in the grocery store parking lot. Like you can see them pretty much anywhere. So it's cool that there's a place you can go and put those observations and help contribute to something bigger. All right, so my last question for you, Matt, is where can people go to learn more about this tool called iNaturalist that we've been talking about? And also, what's a good way to learn more about nature in the city?
Yeah, it's a great question. The great thing is iNaturalist has so many different great videos and resources that teach us about how to use the app along with Seek. and they're completely free to you or your parent. You can go to an app store and download them at any point in time, which is really great. I would just say the best way to learn, though, is to just go out into the cities and just start taking pictures and start seeing what's around you. You can bring a parent, a grandparent, a friend, a family member, go outside and just show off all the different plants and animals in your neighborhood. And another way that you could do it, you could use school time. Ask your teacher. There are different events called bio blitzes. Essentially, it's like a short period of time where you go out and try to find all the different plants and animals that you can. Maybe during a class period, you can create your own bio blitz and try to see what's on your schoolyard. And I know all of you probably want to get outside during school. It's always great to have a little bit of a field trip that can help bring some of your science topics to life, which could be a lot of fun. There's also the City Nature Challenge, which happens every year, usually at the end of April and early May. So we're just kind of missing it at this time of year, but you can do it next year. And it's a competition between cities. So try to take the most pictures of different species over like usually a week period. So that's just a couple examples of some ways that you can teach others about nature in your neighborhood. But there's many other ways to do it. And you all can be, really like the leaders of kind of learning more about what is in your own backyard and in your neighborhood.
Wow, you've got me excited to go outside. As soon as we're done with this call, maybe I'll eat my lunch outside. But now it's time for a Kahoot quiz. All right, so let's go ahead and get this pulled up, Jesse.
Fantastic. Well, Forrest and Matt, first and foremost, thank you so much for a deep dive into how people can explore nature in their cities. I'll bring up that Kahoot link so if people want to join in live on YouTube, live in our classes today. Our game pin is 907-8328. I will bring your screen share down for just a minute here, Forrest. And a note, City Nature Challenge has just concluded, but again, all month long, we are doing backyard bio here at Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. We've got 2,000 observations already made of 1,000 species, 7 countries, 4 continents with the iNaturalist project. So if you guys want to check that out, it is a fantastic program that you guys can join in with your class today. But let's dive in with that Kahoot. For those who are new to Kahoot, the faster you answer, the more points you get. Now, you don't win anything, but you do win the bragging rights of all time and the everlasting respect of all 3 of us here as speakers and hosts in this call. So I'm going to get this underway, see what you guys learned, test a little knowledge, and have some fun before your questions for Matt and Forrest. All right, 3, 2, 1, let's do this thing, folks. Our first question. And Matt and Forrest, you can help us out when there's seconds to spare, okay? How many observations do we think have been made with iNaturalist worldwide? So in the history of iNaturalist, is it 50,000, 1 million, almost 100 million, or too many to count? Like they just can't even keep track anymore, they're done. I don't know. I'm thinking it's a citizen science app. We want people using it. We want to track that. It's probably not too many to count. But what do we have? 14 answers coming in. Oh, a nice split. We had a few too many to count. No one got it right. The correct answer was almost 100 million. You guys went all over the place except the right answer. That has literally never happened in any of our Kahoot quizzes ever. I think we're at 95 million or something like that, which is crazy amount of participation with this. Okay, so you guys will have to get us over the top with 100 million with your observations, okay? All right, question 2. Where can you look for plants and animals using iNaturalist? Now, Forrest and Matt were pretty clear on this. We highlighted a bunch of options. Where do we think? Natural protected areas like this Great Barrier Reef picture, public parks, your neighborhood, or all of the above? Now, I will say, for those who have joined me for a Kahoot before, I typically always choose one answer for this. And Forrest and Matt join me with this. And it is all of the above. And there's more of you now. Way to go. 24 of you got the right answer.
Awesome.
Let's see who our leader is. I think Captain Cheetah's in our lead right now. Glowing pigeon right behind him. It's a big one. Okay. Number 3, what's the most common animal observed in the Chicago area that can be found across the U.S.? For our Canadian friends, too, this is true of Canada as well. Now, ignore the picture. That's always the key with anything that I share with you. It's always a lie. Okay, is it a monarch butterfly, a gray squirrel, a Canada goose? They would want that, wouldn't they? Canada geese. They're so smug. Or Bigfoot. Sasquatch crossing, probably not, but which one is it? Who jumped the trigger finger and pressed Bigfoot? Let's see. One person did, but 16 of you got it right. Monarch butterfly, way to go. I love monarch butterflies. They're spectacular animals. All right. Oh, complete change of our scoreboard. Smiling glider in the lead. Perfect. Question 4, there's one more after this. How many species have been observed globally using iNaturalist? So we have those 95 million observations. But how many different kinds of animals? So monarch butterflies have been seen 1 million times, let's just say. Is it 1,000 species, Is it 100,000, almost 350,000, or 5 million? So many species we can barely shake a stick at it. All right, 1,000. You guys went really low last time. A lot of you thought the lowest number of iNaturalist, and it was way higher. So maybe this one will be higher too. Let's see. Most of you got this right. Almost 350,000 species, which incidentally, super nerdy side note here, is about the number of kinds of beetle in the world, which is really neat. That there's more beetle than absolutely anything. Anyway, okay. Oh, Giving Koala takes the lead, barely ahead of Cute Eagle. You are these people, by the way. Let us know in the chat who you are. We'd love to hear from you. Our final question: how can you help nature in your neighborhood? A hint again. The answer might be that thing here, but pay attention to the answers. Is it native plants? Is it pick up trash? Is it explore nature with family and friends, just getting out and enjoying stuff? Or is it all of the above? Hint, hint, nudge, nudge for our folks there. 3 more seconds to go. 35 of you in. Way to go. And most of you got this right. It is all of the above. Way to go. So picking up trash, you make sure that animals aren't engaging with that trash, eating it, getting sick possibly. Planting native gardens means that you're going to attract native pollinators and birds. And going out and exploring means you will have an appreciation for things and work to help protect it. So our winner in our Kahoot quiz, way to go, is Giving Koala. Nicely done. If you are Giving Koala, any of those on the podium, let us know who you are. And let's dive in with our questions. So we've got our live groups for sure in Illinois, in Alabama, in Alberta today. Welcome in, everybody. I'm going to head to Avoca West, right down the road from you guys in Glenview. If you guys want to kick us off, Miss Michael's class, with a question, you are good to go. Hey, guys. Hello. Hello, 4B. Come on up. Check in with us. We got to unmute your mic if you want to get that done. Oh, so Miss Michael's group, you were there. Come unmute your microphone. All our teachers can unmute your mics. You're in the background. I'll leave you guys to do that in a second. I'll come back. We'll head to Greystone Elementary, so our Birmingham crew. You guys want to unmute your mic? Come on in for a question.
Come on up. Hurry.
She's ready.
She's coming. All right.
All right.
What's your favorite animal that you study?
That is a tough one.
No pressure at all. Yeah.
It's always hard to single them out. So I studied lots of like really tiny little animals that people don't notice all that often. Small mammals is what we call them. They're usually like little rodent species. So think about like mice or shrews. And there's one little animal called a prairie vole. So I think of them as like really hardy mice. And one thing that's really cool about them is that they're like a couple that stay together and raise their kids together. And that is so rare with like small little rodents. And I always found that to just be like so neat that, you know, they work to raise their kids and they help one another. So that's one thing that I really like. And you can find them in the city as well. So we have found them in Chicago.
That's really cool. I love that they have a little rodent family. I think my favorite, it has to be a bird because I love taking my binoculars out and looking for birds, especially in the springtime. And I love this bird called the belted kingfisher, which is a bright blue bird with a big spike of hair, kind of like mine. And they dive into the water and fish. And so they're little fishing birds and they're really cute, really loud. And you can see them by rivers and ponds and in the city.
So do you like it because of all those other nice features, or do you like it because it's got the same hairdo? Be honest. Like, is that?
I'm trying to become a belted kingfisher with my hair. That's my goal.
Hey, well, we'll get to that. If you just flap your arms really fast by the end of the program. Nice, gentlemen. Let's head to Avoca West. If you guys have a question now, you're good. Your mic's unmuted. Come on up. Hey, 4B. Hello.
Yeah, somebody.
Have you ever found something so unnatural that it went on research project?
Anything unnatural, anything odd? You're out there, you're looking for animals. What did you find? Weirdest thing. A lot of shopping carts in Toronto that are just randomly in streams. People like to push their shopping carts into rivers for some strange reason in my city. So I don't know if you guys have that there. Hopefully not. But what's some weird stuff?
Well, with one of my old jobs, we put up like wildlife cameras all across the city. So we put them in parks, cemeteries, golf courses, all other green spaces you can find throughout the city. And we would see all kinds of crazy things. So sometimes there would be like a whole like dumping area where you'd find like old TVs that you all probably have never seen before because they're big and boxy, and all kinds of other industrial things. But it's really interesting because like different animals actually like use them to make homes. Like, so it's a really good like way of showing how nature can adapt. Even if we kind of change the environment, they find ways to make really good uses out of it. So we see a pile of trash, they might see an opportunity to make a home. Not to say that we should dump trash out in the wild. That's not what I'm saying, but they're making the best of what they see, which is really cool.
So my thing, I work with a lot of volunteers around the city who help to take care of different green spaces. They get out and they plant plants, they pull out weeds, we make trails for people to walk. And one time we were in a park and there was something moving under the grass. And we were like, what is that? We thought it was maybe like a snake or a frog or something. And it turned out to be a little guinea pig that kept peeking its head out to come look at us and then running away. It was so shy. So someone probably let their pet out or their pet got out, which you shouldn't do because those animals are not good at surviving outside. They get scared. But it was very weird and it was very surprising to see a little guinea pig running free in the park. So hopefully his parents found him and brought him home.
You noted something in one of your earlier things about binoculars, and I want to stress a lot of public libraries now. So again, we got Birmingham crew, we've got our Glenview team, we've got people joining in Calgary. Public libraries often offer binoculars for rent. Just like you can take out a book, you can take out binoculars, you can take out nature guides. That's a really great way of exploring and being able to see things that you might not otherwise have the chance to interact with when you're out in the wild with that CCAP, with iNaturalist. So I really encourage our classes to check that out. All right, in fact, Miss Katsko, if you do have any questions on YouTube, our live groups are there. Please feel free to share in the chat. We'll take as many as we can. But we will head back to our Alabama crew. If you guys have any more live for us, come on in, unmute your mic, and you are good to go. Hey, Greystone, hi.
You forgot it.
Hey, he's coming up, Baylor.
Have you ever discovered a new species?
Ooh, no pressure.
Ooh.
I've never discovered a new species. That would be really cool, but I think they're out there waiting for people to find.
Yeah, I can also say I've never discovered personally a new species. It can be really cool because sometimes they'll name that species after the person that discovers it, which is super awesome. And I guess one thing to note is that there's like about a little over, I think, 2 million species that have been like identified in the world, and they estimate that there could be as many as 8.7 million species out there. So there's so many more out there that can be identified. So the opportunity is there.
Yes. So honestly, for our students, about a couple of weeks ago, we had Shannon Johnson on from the Monterey Bay Aquarium. And when a student asked, how many species have you discovered? She actually was like, I don't know. Like, I've forgotten how many I've discovered, because she gets to go in deep sea submersibles and send robots down, and she's found like dozens of species, which is very, very cool. But that's true. Like in your neighborhood, you're unlikely to come across species in your local neck of the woods that are new to science, because someone somewhere has found them and described them before. But every time scientists go to the rainforest, every time scientists go to the deep sea, we find new things, but there's just so much to discover out there. It's really spectacular, the ecosystems.
There's also lots of tiny little things, right? Like moths and little beetles and very small worms and all kinds of super small stuff that sometimes it's easier to find a new species in those kind of categories because they're so tiny and hard to spot. So keep your eyes open.
If you're on the lookout for a new giraffe, it's probably not out there. It's not hiding in the trees for that long. Abaca West, I will come to you guys in a minute, but Ms. Katsko's class has a question. What species are you interested in studying that you haven't had a chance to study yet? So in these nature programs, in the work that you do, is there anything that really jumps out that you'd like to feature with the programs that you bring the public in on? Or, I don't know, anything that jumps?
Wow. Well, I would say with like the projects that we work on now, we're trying to really have a better idea of like what all is out there. And along with that, we're also trying to start conversations with different communities that maybe aren't using tools like iNaturalist all that much. So we're trying to kind of fill in some of those like data gaps in the Chicago area. So I think one thing that we would like to do is to really start having conversations with those communities to try to see what their connection is with nature and if they have different species that they want to learn more about. So I don't know if I know this is a little bit like a side answer here. It's not necessarily like the species that we want to study, but we want to learn more about what other people want to study, so then we can focus on those species as well.
Nice, great answer. Forrest, anything to add?
I think that was really good. I mean, iNaturalist helps us look at anything that people could possibly spot. So it could be a plant, it could be a mushroom, it could be a tree. Yeah. And so I think the opportunity is to see what's out there and look at all the things, all the species.
Outstanding. Illinois, come on back in, Avica West, and we'll take one more from Miss Catskill before we wrap up in a minute. Hey, guys.
What's the most common animal that you find?
Ooh. Is it that monarch, or what is it in Chicago when you guys are going out looking?
I think for me, it's the gray squirrel because we see a lot of squirrels. And growing up, there was a squirrel that was always hanging around my backyard, and we named her Pepper. So I just always think of the gray squirrel.
Beautiful name. I like it. Matt, is that like in your experience? Gray squirrel, like I'm from Toronto, where there's probably like 4 squirrels behind me right now. Actually, there's one on the other side. One's about to jump in my ear. So I feel your pain down there. Anything that also do? We got a lot of robins here. Okay, so it's pretty similar when you're in this. I wonder for our Alabama folks, I'll actually look that up in between our next question before we wrap up what Birmingham might have as their most common species on iNaturalist. That's another thing too, is that wherever you are in the world, by going to iNaturalist, you can type in your city name. You'll see not only every single species that's been found there, you'll see where it's been discovered, you'll see the most common species, and you'll see all the people that go out and explore things the most, which actually does lead us to our next question and a nice wrap up for the program. Have you found that the types of plants and animals being found have changed since looking at Seek and iNaturalist? Like, do you notice new things? Do you find that over time people are exploring and finding different things? However you want to take that question.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I would say it kind of depends on the people who are looking for these different plants and animals, right? We all definitely have areas that we like to go when we're trying to find these different species. So then we tend to gravitate towards things that we like, right? So that does kind of change over time. And the more people that are, using this app, I think the less you're going to have of the favoritism of different species, which is kind of exciting. About that. But I would say in terms of like changing over time, we're definitely seeing just a lot more plants and animals within like the city. So outside of like the parks. And right when, people started using the app, it was very much focused on forest preserves and city parks. But now we're starting to see what plants and animals are venturing into different home areas and neighborhoods in the middle of downtown where there's not a whole lot of green space. And we're starting to see that there's a lot more animals that are living in all different parts of the city, and even some animals that only live in areas where there's not a lot of green space. So it's really interesting to kind of figure out what those interactions are and what those preferences are for those different animals.
Fantastic. By the way, I checked out Alabama on the whole. I'll actually bring this up as a screen share really quick for everybody.
Is the northern mockingbird on there?
Let's find out. We've got green anole as a lizard is the #1 most observed creature, which is wild to me. But like, first of all, this is a beautiful group of animals. We have our gray squirrel, of course. Our friend that we can't escape from no matter where we are. Tiger swallowtails, Gulf fritillary, common box turtle. So these are the most common species. I hope for our Alabama class, you guys have had the chance to see some of these. But any place in the world, I just typed in Alabama into this search bar. Any species you want to find, you can see where it's been found around the world. In Alabama, there's been 647,000 observations. So that's one of the big fun things that you can do with this app is explore any region of the world. If you want to find out what's happening in Indonesia or Australia or East Africa, you can do that with one click. And it's an amazing way of exploring the world of biodiversity. Matt and Forrest, time flies when you're having fun, so we are nearing the end of our broadcast. I want to make sure for our students today, if you guys get the chance, tnc.org has all the information about the amazing work the Nature Conservancy does to conserve wildlife, to educate the public around it. We've got our big iNaturalist project page happening right now, so all month of May long, you guys can join in, add your observations there, connect with other teachers around the globe as part of our Backyard Bio Initiative. So we'd love to have you guys check that out and explore your nature neighborhood. Matt, Forrest, before we wrap up, is there any last message you both want to share with us about getting out and exploring, or should we just leave the program now and go and explore? Is that like the key?
Definitely getting out and exploring is definitely the fun part. I will say that if you all wanted to like start an iNaturalist project, if your school wanted to start your own project, you could do that and see how that changes over time, which is really exciting. But yeah, just get out there, find different species, and really try to find them in unexpected places, because we know that animals and plants are very adaptive and they're all over, but we often overlook them in certain areas, and we want to make sure that that doesn't happen. And we want to learn more about, the plants and animals around you in your neighborhood. So
Forrest?
Yeah, that was great, Matt. I think just thank you all for having us and for being such a great group and asking really good questions. Have fun the rest of your day, and thanks for caring about nature.
Outstanding. Well, gentlemen, it's your first program with us, so I'm going to bring in our teachers to say a big thank you and farewell, as we always do here at Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. So Greystone Elementary, Avoca West, unmute those microphones and join me. Thank you so much for being here, everyone. Bye, guys.